What's going on, guys? Fight Season MMA here, and today I want to talk about 5 fights to make in the UFC prior to this year's end. And all of these fights are not title fights, so we will not see like Ilya Topuria versus Max Holloway on here. We will only see fights that do not have to deal with the title. And if you guys enjoy the content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. 98% of people who are watching my videos are not subscribed. So please go down there and smash the like button if you guys want to keep following and getting the latest MMA news as soon as possible. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. Thank you guys so much, and let's get right into the video. Okay, so the first fight that I think it needs to be made is a fight that needs to be rebooked, and that is Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. Khalil Roundtree Jr. is one of the scariest people in the 205 division, right? Now, you just look at how he's built, and he's built like an absolute Mack truck. He is so powerful, and he swings for the fences every time he punches. And Jamal Hill, you all know, has been trying to get back at that title. He is talking all this smack to Alex Pereira, and I think that this fight against Khalil Roundtree Jr. is getting Jamal Hill on the correct foot, getting back to that title shot. Now, this fight for Jamal Hill is a very tough fight, and I think there's a lot of easier fights in this division. Since Jamal Hill doesn't want to grapple and doesn't want to wrestle, this fight is going to be extremely hard because Khalil Roundtree Jr. is a lot faster than people think. We all look at that Anthony Smith fight, and yes, I all know that people say that Anthony Smith isn't the greatest fighter in the world, yes, but he got absolutely clocked by Khalil Roundtree, and that was something. You look at the Roman Dolidze fight that just happened, and he wasn't able to do that. Now, Jamal Hill is going to be able to go in there, and he's going to have to strike. He's going to have to use that power he possesses, and going to have to use that skill that he has in the skill and experience of winning the title, and use that to go in there and defeat Khalil Roundtree Jr. Ultimately, this is a fight that needs to be made again just because of the title implications it could have. If Khalil Roundtree Jr. beats Jamal Hill, he is either next for a title or is in line for a title, one more win away. And if Jamal Hill wins, that puts him right back in the title conversation. At number 4, I have Charles Oliveira versus Rafael Fiziev, and you might be thinking, why is Charles Oliveira stepping down so much in the rankings? But really, Charles Oliveira has fought everyone in the division. I was looking at people that Charles Oliveira could fight, and it was like he's fought Justin Gaethje, he's fought Dustin Poirier, he's fought Beneil Dariush, Gamrot's booked. A lot of these people have fights, they're booked. He just fought Arman, but Rafael Fiziev is one of the toughest fights in the UFC lightweight division, and that would be an absolute banger of a fight, putting Charles Oliveira in the octagon with Rafael Fiziev. Fiziev is one of the most skilled fighters in the UFC lightweight division, and I know a lot of people don't know who he is. He fought Justin Gaethje back at UFC 286 in London, and he had an amazing performance. He was putting it on Justin Gaethje in that first round. The second round was really close where Gaethje was able to get the win, but in that third round, he did end up losing that fight pretty badly. But Rafael Fiziev is an amazing striker. He's one of the fastest people in the UFC lightweight division. And compare that with Charles Oliveira's skills, his pressure, his jiu-jitsu, and everything he possesses. This would be one of the greatest fights to make. And this would be an amazing fight for Charles Oliveira to rebound if he's not going to go out to 170 and put Rafael Fiziev in there with one of the most skilled UFC lightweights of all time. Since he's so good. His last fight with Gamrot, he did tear his ACL and he did end up losing that fight. But in the first round, he was piecing Gamrot up so badly. And Gamrot had nothing to do and no answers for Fiziev. So I do think that a fight between Charles Oliveira and Rafael Fiziev would be something to make really before this year ends. Number 3, I have Diego Lopez versus Yair Rodriguez, and the only reason I do not have Brian Ortega is because I think Brian Ortega is going to end up moving up to the lightweight division because that's what he was talking about prior to fighting Diego Lopez, and that's why his weight was so hard to get down. It was because he was bulking for the UFC lightweight division. But I think Diego Lopez versus Yair Rodriguez at the UFC Sphere at 306 would be the greatest fight to make for Diego Lopez. You give him someone who is an amazing step up in competition and one of the best strikers in the UFC featherweight division, and give Diego Lopez this challenge because Diego Lopez is one of the best prospects in the UFC right now. I know Diego Lopez lost to Movsar Evloev, but when you consider that he lost to Movsar on 5 days' notice is absolutely crazy, and Movsar just beat Arnold Allen, who's one of the better featherweights currently in the UFC featherweight division. So having that, Yair Rodriguez versus Diego Lopez would be an action-packed fight. full of kicks, full of submissions, full of different type of stuff that every single fighter wants to see. And this would be an amazing fight to build up a next title challenger in the UFC featherweight division. If Yair wins, he beats one of the best up and coming prospects in the UFC featherweight division. I think that's a very big milestone in his career. And if Diego Lopez wins, he beats a veteran in the UFC featherweight division in amazing fashion, because there's no way Yair Rodriguez's fight is going to be boring. At number 2, I have Robert Whittaker versus Sean Strickland, and I think that this fight needs to happen just because there's so much controversy at the 185-pound division of who should get the title shot next. You look at Sean Strickland saying he's going to sit there and wait for the title shot, and yes, I understand that he did almost beat Dricus du Plessis and he did beat Israel Adesanya, but Robert Whittaker looked amazing in his last fight and looked amazing against Paulo Costa. And I do think that has some validity to it, considering that he's going to get a title shot in the very near future. When you have two challengers, the only logical thing to do is to put them against each other to make that one number one contender. And I think that this fight happening before year's end is something that is truly needs to happen. You got Sean Strickland, who fights in that Philly shell and has amazing takedown defense, whereas Robert Whittaker has perfected the blitz so much and has implemented grappling into his style and is one of the best overall fighters in the UFC, has some amazing wins over Jared Cannonier, Paulo Costa. That Ikram Iliskerov knockout in 2 minutes was amazing, and almost beating Israel Adesanya, which a lot of people think he did, at UFC 271. But this fight between Sean Strickland and Robert Whittaker needs to happen before the year's end to fully settle who is going to be the number one contender in the UFC middleweight division. And number 1, I have Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Jack Della Maddalena, and this is the fight that they both want. This is the number one contender fight after Bilal Muhammad for the UFC welterweight division, and this is one of the best fights in the UFC right now. Shavkat Rakhmonov is one of the best prospects the UFC has ever seen, and I say that because of how well-rounded he is. 18 wins and 18 finishes. You'd never see that, especially when coming to competition in the UFC. Yes, his early on fights is understandable of getting the finishes, but finishing Jeff Neal with the Bulldog choke, finishing Stephen Boy Thompson with the rear naked choke, absolutely impressive wins in the UFC. And you look at Jack Della Maddalena, who just beat Gilbert Burns at UFC 299 in incredible fashion, to where he was losing that fight 2 rounds to 0 and came back using that IQ to perfectly time a knee that hit Gilbert Burns used his thigh to hit Gilbert Burns right in the shoulder, disorienting him and getting the TKO win. Jack Della Maddalena is one of the only people in the UFC who wants to fight Shavkat Rakhmonov, which is crazy to me because no one wants to fight that dude. And Shavkat is one of the biggest prospects the UFC has had, like I said earlier. This fight would be so amazing. You got Jack Della Maddalena's IQ, that counter ability, that amazing takedown defense versus Shavkat Rakhmonov, who is one of the best, craziest strikers in the UFC right now and one of the best grapplers. And everything is perfect that he throws. And yes, there's a little bit of ickiness in his stand-up, if I gotta say, and a little bit of different categories there, but everything that he does is so well perfected, and he is an absolute dog out there. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Jack Della Maddalena is the fight to be made before the year's end, and there's what no one else can tell me different. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA. Please let me know what you think about these matchups, and if there's any other matchups that you guys think that should be made, and if there is, please leave a comment talking about what matchups that you do believe. I try to respond to as many comments as possible, so please go down there and leave a comment, and I will try my best to respond to it. Also, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you guys are enjoying the UFC content, please subscribe and turn on the bell just so you don't miss any other videos. My videos come out as soon as possible about the UFC news, and I try to do some fun other UFC videos breaking down fighters, breaking down fights, and doing these crazy lists right here to where I get to voice my opinion. Also, like I said, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you guys very soon with more UFC content and news.